No good thing in life will come into our life apart from through making a degree of sacrifice. All right, so there's a principle of kind of opportunity cost. We can't have all things in life. And when two people enter into a relationship with each other, if they want the relationship to work and be healthy, then two people cannot bring their own independent agendas into the relationship or the marriage. Possibly to a degree to begin with, but a marriage is a working union. All right, it's kind of what it is. Two people actually working on building a life together. All right. Now we understand that this isn't a cultural idea. We understand that a lot of people get into marriage for the purposes of just doing life together, which is fine. You know, doing life together or existing together or just living together. But then it's something else, committing to building a life together. And when two people commit to building a life together, well, this is only going to happen in alignment with a vision. All right. So that's kind of the context that I want to use to open up this discussion now. We've been together for around about 10 years. We've been married for 8 or 9? 9, close, 8.5, almost 9?
8 years.
8.5.
8.5.
8.5. 9 in July. Right, there we go. 9 years in July. So what I'm saying is we've both given up much. We've both sacrificed much. Right? I have sacrificed my passion and interest for traveling around and living life relatively recklessly. Right? Now, I would be reckless with money. I had never had any problem generating income. Right? No, never had any problem making money. But managing money this has caused me problem after problem after problem. And entering into marriage, when I said yes, I do, to my wife Karen here, I was entering into a relationship where we'd agreed, we're going to share everything. You know, what is mine is yours and yours is mine and all that sort of thing. And for the first few years, we had, you know, independent bank accounts and all that sort of thing. And the reason why we had independent bank accounts was because we hadn't committed to working together. Not in the first few years. We hadn't committed to unifying. We were still figuring out what unifying actually meant. And it's not like either of us were intentionally looking for it. Neither of us knew what it meant to build a healthy marriage. My parents were the only experience I had to go off, and they ended in divorce. They had no unity, no collaboration, no intimacy, very little trust. Karen had a very different parental upbringing.
Yeah, my dad passed away when I was quite young, so I was just brought up by my mum and I didn't have an example of what a healthy relationship looked like. I didn't know anyone that was really in a healthy marriage either. So, which
is quite interesting, and what became apparent to us was Karen kind of had an expectation or an idea of what a responsible male role model would look like. And because Karen never had this father figure role model, that was what she'd placed on me when we first got married. That's kind of where that came from. I ended up filling a role that she'd historically missed in her younger years.
That is true, actually. That's quite accurate. And I didn't come to appreciate that till obviously later on in later years, but that was the imbalance that we talked about earlier on when I came into the marriage. That was kind of how I was looking at you, almost like a father figure role model.
Yeah, that was it. Now, that was something that I was aware of back in the early stages, and it probably took me a year or two to really acknowledge, wow, this is an issue. This is costing us too much. We need to address this. So the reason why I say that is because relationships demand sacrifice, and sacrifice means essentially giving something up. Right? If you want something greater in your life, you've got to create space for it by giving a lesser thing up. For example, if you really want a six-pack, if you want a healthy body, you're going to have to give up eating cake or munching on junk food, on pizzas every single night of the week. If you want to be found attractive by your partner, by your spouse, you're going to have to give up laziness or apathy. And invest more into yourself, into spicing things up. Actually, ask yourself the question: how fascinating am I to my husband or to my wife or whatever? All right. So life is this kind of constant trade-off. We have the opportunity in marriage to trade off good for better all of the time. That's a beautiful thing. All right. And when this can become the standard in a marriage or a long-term relationship, can then start getting pretty exciting, pretty interesting, and really enjoyable to be part of. But only if two people are committed to this process of trading off good for something better, or even great. All right. Now, here's the idea. If two people aren't working towards the same end goal, then there can't be any unity. Right? You can't have two people unified if they're not working towards the same thing. It's the same in business. Right? If you have two people entering into business together and they're not working towards the same goal, that's what we would refer to as a conflict of interests. You might have come across this term in your workplace. Right? It's one of the most common reasons why people are laid off in work. A manager will say conflict of interests. This person was actually working in conflict with the company's interests, best interests. And this is a conflict of interest is just where the individual puts their own interests before that of the greater entity, i.e.
the marriage.
Yeah. All right. So this is where it's useful to set standards, right? Such as, what is it that we actually want to commit to working towards?
Yeah.
So we'd started having these conversations around about 5 or 6 years ago. And I think in fairness, without putting any words in your mouth here, hopefully, you'd never given it much consideration.
No, I hadn't. No. From my perspective, I was quite happy, just kind of cruising through life without really too much purpose or drive behind why I was doing what I was doing.
Now, Karen was a musician back then, so beautiful singing voice. You'd started getting established on Spotify, and you started creating music, and you were gigging, and they were getting more. You're part of a really strong band. So you were already part of that, and that was going in a direction. Yeah. I'd been working on developing a business for a few years that was generating us a good income.
Yeah.
All right. So we had your agenda, which was great, and it was good, and it could have done great things, but it wasn't providing anything. We had what I was already working on, which was enabling us to, the business enabled us to buy our first house.
Yeah.
With real ease, without kind of being stretched financially in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the business that I'd built was allowing us to live a pretty, financially flexible life. And then that business then went on to enable us to build the beautiful house that we live in today.
That's true, yeah.
Your agenda, your music, was generating some income, but not much. So this kind of brought us to a place of not conflict, but it was kind of like a crossroads. Are we going to work independently here, i.e. I keep on doing my thing, or would we, and you keep on doing your thing, or would we be willing to start really collaborating together here for the purposes of serving an even greater purpose?
No, I think that's really true. And in terms of what actually happened, I made the decision to set aside the music stuff for a time being anyway, and commit to us working together to build the business, because that was in line with our long-term goals, to have time and space, to have a family. And
yeah, bingo. Now, this is the interesting thing. Some of the advice we've been given, some of the unsolicited advice we've been given over the years, is some well-intending people, right, salt of the earth kind of people, but isn't it good for both of you to have your own interests? Well, yeah, of course it is. We both do have our own interests. But it's also good for a husband and wife to unify and learn how to collaborate together. And what we've both found was that business gave us an absolutely perfect context through which we can do this. Mm-hmm. But it served a greater purpose. Rather than just us working together for the sake of it, right, what we'd agreed on was that we actually both want to be full-time parents. Yeah. Right? We both want to be full-time parents. Reason being is because, I grew up not knowing my dad. He was there but not there, so I never had that father-son role model relationship in my life. All I had was a mum. She was there, busy. She was at where she was at, which was great. But I never had that father figure, And likewise for Karen. When Karen lost her dad at a young age, was it 8 years old?
I was 7 when he died, yeah.
7 years old. You've also grown up not knowing a father figure role model. Yeah. So from the pair of us, we actually, as we kind of talked, we're actually both passionate about exactly the same thing. We both want a family, but what we weren't willing to do was start a family until we were in a position where we could both put our full, undivided time and attention into it, where we share the responsibility, right? And that became our number one priority. So it made practical sense then. Well, the business is already working. All that we need to do is rather than kind of working independently and apart, we just both channel our effort on this business. We scale it up. We increase our income stream so we can clear our debts, build and prepare the home to how we want it to be, and then start a family, which is actually what we're coming on to in the next stage of our life. Incidentally, we've nailed ours. We've really nailed it. Not just through learning to coexist and building a friendship, but we built a trust-based relationship through learning how to collaborate and work together in business.
Yeah.
So,
and coming into agreement on this common vision and purpose was actually really pivotal in that, because just to complete that story, so in terms of a music career for myself, like when we started talking about family and both being available full-time parents, there's nothing more that I want to do in life than that. And a music career is completely secondary to that. As we've come into alignment on what our vision is for the future, we've then been able to say, well, okay, so what's the fastest way we're going to get there? How's the most effective way that we're going to get there?
What responsibilities could you take on that you're not currently taking on? What responsibilities could I take on that I'm not currently taking on? There's some areas that I'm kind of operating in right now where I'm not being particularly effective. Could you take on that? There's some areas which you're not particularly effective at that I'm better at. So we learn to become really, really balanced in our approach, to the point where we just become completely complementary of each other, right? Because we're working towards a unified vision, all right? And this is, again, going to seem like a really abstract, alien concept to some people. And I know, right? I get it. This is a countercultural idea. You might be watching this training independently, apart from your partner, which is an issue within itself, right? But the question is, if you're a wife, especially, where's your husband going, right? Where's he going? Because if he's not going anywhere great right now, that's not necessarily on him. He's most likely just doing his best with what he sees himself as having. But it's really when a husband and a wife learn to collaborate and complement each other. Let's build something greater together for our future. This now gives you a basis for really solidifying the unity. It's shared vision. If you don't have a shared vision and a shared direction and sense of purpose, then you might very well end up spending the rest of your days pursuing your own agendas. And you might think that's okay, but it's not as great as, and it's not rewarding as, and it's not as fulfilling as. Walking in the results and the outcomes of the pair of us actually working together.